for Saturday, September 6, 2025. I am Curlin Brown. Thanks so much for joining us. And we begin with an update. The Electoral Office of Jamaica has provided more information on the progress of the final count for the September 3 general election. Counting has been completed in 45 constituencies with approximately 94% of the 7,294 boxes across the island counted up to that time. The counting of ballots continues for the other 18 constituencies by returning officers in the presence of the candidates and/or their representatives. Now, up to 3 p.m. today, Saturday, the final count was complete for 2 of the 3 electoral divisions in the local government by-elections, namely Olympic Gardens and Denham Town. The count for Chancery Hall continues. Now, our newsroom has been informed after the completion of the final count in St. Thomas Easton for the contest involving Dr. Michelle Charles and former Morant Bay Mayor Yvonne Rose Shaw, the results remain the same. Yvonne Rose Shaw has secured the victory. On Friday, our newsroom reported that incumbent Donovan Williams of the JLP had regained the Kingston Central seat on the final count. The final count saw Williams tallying 4,832 votes to Steve McGregor's 4,753, a difference of 79 votes. On the night of the elections, the preliminary count indicated the PNP's McGregor had prevailed by 12 votes. Our newsroom will continue to provide updates as they become available. Meanwhile, in a post-election statement from the People's National Party issued on Saturday, the leadership expresses deep concerns about what it describes as the widespread reports of vote buying and voter suppression in the recent general election. The party, which lost by a handful of seats, calls on the Electoral Commission, law enforcement and civil society to take decisive steps to confront and eradicate such practices. The campaign spokesperson is Donna Scott Motley.
The People's National Party is deeply concerned about the widespread reports of vote buying and voter suppression in the recent general election. The long delays for voters at so many polling stations and the refusal to allow persons in line at 5 p.m. to vote are also cause for concern. These practices strike at the very heart of our democracy, undermining the right of every Jamaican to freely choose their representatives without fear or inducement. While we respect the will of the people, we cannot ignore the corrosive effect of these illegal and immoral actions on public trust in the electoral process. And we call on the Electoral Commission, law enforcement and civil society to take decisive steps to confront and eradicate these practices. We will use every platform available to promote critical reforms to our electoral laws to address these practices that undermine our democracy. Our democracy is too precious to be sold or stolen, and the PNP will continue to stand firm in defense of the Jamaican people's right to vote freely and without intimidation or coercion.
Now, the PNP says after all the data relating to the concerns have been compiled and fully reviewed, a press conference will be held to inform the public of its content. And the Jamaica Labour Party spokesperson, Kamina Johnson-Smith, has reacted to the statements from the PNP. Johnson-Smith says the messaging seeks to denigrate the democratic process in Jamaica. She further describes the messaging as highly disappointing, pointing to the preliminary reports of both the CARICOM and the OAS electoral observation missions on the general election. Johnson-Smith says Jamaica's electoral processes and tradition of peaceful transition of power continue to be models for developed and developing countries alike. She adds the Jamaica Labour Party is also in the process of looking into feedback from its candidates regarding allegations of improper conduct by the PNP.
The statement issued by the PNP in respect of the electoral process is to be highly disappointing, and one that demonstrates that the Mark Golding-led party still has not learned that manufactured narratives and political mischief and lies will not win the hearts or trust of the Jamaican people. Jamaica's electoral processes and our tradition of peaceful transition of power, they continue to be models for developed and developing countries alike and should therefore remain a source of pride for all Jamaican people, even as we know that there is always room for improvement and that we should always be vigilant. We should always be vigilant about any activities which could put our democracy at risk. And in this regard, I point to the preliminary reports of both the OAS and the CARICOM electoral missions, which have been entirely positive. I believe they have said that any of the hiccups which they observed were not detrimental to the process, and certainly they compared us favorably with our Caribbean brothers and sisters.
His purpose is admirable, but it must match Jamaica's purpose. That comment from the desk of political analyst and a former public sector organization of Jamaica President Howard Mitchell, describing the Prime Minister-designate while assessing the country's democratic process. Here is Crystal Williams with that story.
The Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, claimed 34 constituencies in this year's general election, while the People's National Party, PNP, polled the most votes in the other 29, a difference of 5 seats between the parties, compared to 2020, where the JLP secured 49 seats in Parliament, to the PNP's 14 with a difference of 35. Former president of the PSOJ, Howard Mitchell, says democracy should benefit from the results of this recent election.
Because the margin of victory is relatively small in terms of seats and is extremely small in terms of votes.
He commended the JLP on their campaign strategy, especially because he viewed it as underestimated.
The JLP, in terms of the marketing and the air campaign that the JLP ran, it started about 3 weeks before the election. And if you recall, the surveys at the time showed that the PNP were ahead. I personally thought that that they were in a difficult position, that they were exposed before this campaign started because they didn't seem to have a theme.
Mitchell also suggested that the People's National Party leader should be credited for his management of the campaign, showing maturity despite internal struggles.
2 years ago, the PNP had a bruising internal struggle, which divided the party considerably. And I think Golding calmed that down to some extent and brought the interests together.
He says the closeness was expected, comparing the two campaigns to establish some of the reasons why.
The JLP kind of lost touch with the electorate, and the PNP, for some period of time, even before the election was called, made a conscious effort to energize their base.
He says that as the new MPs get settled in, it will allow for a more balanced dialogue and energy in Parliament.
Hopefully, it will also mean that attendance at Parliament will improve, as people, in order to get their bills through, will have to depend on full attendance of either side to get the votes.
He concluded that the upcoming Parliament will be filled with vigor and vibrancy. Crystal Williams, CVM News.
The Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the JCC, has extended congratulations to the Jamaica Labour Party, the JLP, on its electoral victory and commends the People's National Party, the PNP, for demonstrating resilience by significantly increasing its representation in Parliament by 15 seats, noting voter turnout this election was lower than desired, standing at 39.5%. The JCC highlights the need for urgent electoral reforms, whilst also admitting to concerns that the current voters list remains substantially inflated with names that should have been removed long ago. The Chamber is now calling for the comprehensive updating of the voters list to enhance confidence in the electoral process. In extending congratulations to the Jamaica Labour Party, the JLP, and its leader, Dr. Andrew Holness, on the victory in the recently concluded general election, Jamaicans for Justice JFJ is urging the incoming administration to resume what it describes as the vital work on constitutional reform with strong bipartisan efforts, ensuring an inclusive and participatory process. The group is encouraged by the party to pursue the outlined priorities in justice reform, national security, anti-corruption, governance, and plans to address gender-based violence and domestic violence contained in its manifesto. The JFJ also acknowledges the People's National Party, the PNP, for securing a significant number of parliamentary seats, which the organization suggests will contribute to a more balanced legislature, whilst also advocating for bipartisan efforts in parliamentary committees, including the appointment of opposition members as chairs to foster greater collaboration and accountability.
The organization looks forward to the formation of the new government, particularly the naming of a new cabinet. Hope will reflect an energized, commitment to what the JLP outlined in their manifesto. We particularly look forward to the resumption of the constitutional reform process with greater and stronger bipartisan engagement, with greater public education efforts and consultation. And certain for us, we look forward to transformative proposals being put forward in the new phase of the constitutional reform. While JFJ certainly welcomes and look forward to the removal of the monarch, we believe that other things should be on the agenda. For example, exploring electoral reforms, greater accountability by citizens through mechanisms such as the right to recall, the entrenchment of key institutions, for example, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. And we look forward to dialogue with the government on the establishment of a national human rights institution, which we have called for to be entrenched as it replaces the office of the public defender.
The Jamaica political scene has seen an increase in women taking a seat to serve the nation. 19 women are set to enter the House of Representatives following the general election. As the celebration continues, history has been created in Eastern Hanover, with the People's National Party's first female MP candidate to represent that constituency, Andrea Perkis. Here's Drusel Mills with more.
She unseated the Jamaica Labour Party's Dave Brown by a relatively wide margin of 767 votes. Even on nomination day in August, Perkis was all smiles and confident, while incumbent Brown appeared uncertain of the results that would come.
In all fairness, I make a prediction in 2020 and I double that. I really don't want to predict this time around. I realize that this is actually a much closer election, but I think I should win.
I feel the support, I feel the love, and I can see the look on the faces of the Eastern Hanoverians. They're ready for change, they're ready for proper representation, and they're ready for Perkis.
The results came in, and the PNP supporters paraded through sections of Hopewell on election day with a makeshift coffin and a suitcase bearing the photos of Dave Brown, symbolically ushering him out. Perkis is excited about her win and is ready to work.
My plans going forward is to pay attention to what is most urgent, and that would be road and water. Sometimes I don't know which one is more urgent because both are really bad living situations for Eastern Hanoverians. I was pretty confident about the numbers that I got. I believe the margin is 767. I was pretty confident about it. I have been on the ground for 2 years almost, and within those 2 years, I connected with the people. They saw me for who I am. We had many conversations. I listened to them, and that's where I recognized that the needs are great.
Drusel Mills reporting for CVM News.
And we will have more CVM News at 7.